It's minus 30 degrees outside. The wind is screaming across an empty rest stop, rocking a row of parked semis on their springs. One of them sits under a streetlight, engine off, completely silent. No exhaust, no idling. Inside, driver is asleep in a t-shirt, one arm hanging off the bunk while you're at home, Mugson, in two sweaters, still reaching for the thermostat. It's not the engine keeping the driver alive in there. He shut that off hours ago, and by law, running it again tonight could cost him over $1,000. What's actually keeping him warm is hidden somewhere under that mattress, and it isn't the only thing working against him tonight. Something sitting in his own fuel tank is quietly trying to turn against him too, and neither problem ever shows up from outside the truck. Three separate systems, fighting the same cold, and by the end of this video, you'll never look at a parked truck during winter the same way again. Most people assume the driver just leaves the truck running all night. That used to be true, and it's dying out fast. Under almost every modern sleeper cab now sits a bunk heater, usually made by Espar or Webasto, two German manufacturers that have quietly dominated this tiny, obsessive little market for decades. It's a diesel-fired furnace roughly the size of a shoebox, mounted under the bed, pulling fuel straight from the truck's own tank. It draws in outside air, mixes it with a fine spray of diesel inside a sealed combustion chamber, ignites it, and blows the heated air straight into the cab through a vent under the bunk. The exhaust gases vent separately, underneath the trailer, so none of it ever comes back inside with him. These units sip fuel at around 0.06 of a gallon per hour. Compare that to a full engine idling all night just to run the cab's heater core, burning close to a gallon of diesel an hour to do the exact same job. Some of the newer units are rated to keep producing heat at temperatures as low as -46 degrees Celsius, colder than almost anywhere in the continental United States ever actually gets. Installed, a decent setup runs somewhere between $900 and $4,000 depending on the size of the unit and the labor involved, and fleets that pay for them usually earn that money back within a year or two in fuel savings alone. The one real weakness in the whole system, the fan, the fuel pump, and the ignition, draw their power off the truck's starter batteries all night long. Let those batteries run down, and the heater that's supposed to save him becomes the thing that quietly shuts off at 3 in the morning, with nobody awake to notice until the cold already has. Which is exactly the kind of situation the law was never built to understand. Because here's the part almost nobody outside the industry knows. In dozens of states, simply running your main engine to stay warm can get you fined. California allows 5 minutes. Illinois allows none at all. New Jersey caps it at 3 minutes, with penalties that climb past $1,000 for repeat offenses. These laws exist to cut down on diesel pollution and engine noise near neighborhoods and truck stops, and on paper, most of them don't care whether it's 10 degrees outside or 100. But dig into the fine print, and almost every one of these states quietly carves out an exception the moment the temperature drops far enough. Minnesota lifts the restriction completely once it's below -10 degrees Fahrenheit. New Hampshire runs a sliding scale where the colder it gets, the longer you're legally allowed to idle, no questions asked. Colorado allows 20 minutes of idling per hour once it drops below 10 degrees, but only if the truck is parked at least 1,000 feet from a school, a hospital, or a daycare. The entire system runs on one quiet trade-off. Install a certified bunk heater or auxiliary power unit, and the legal exemption barely matters anymore, because you were never going to need the main engine in the first place. $1,000 fine for trying not to freeze, unless you already solved the problem. Which brings us to the part of this story that has nothing to do with the driver himself and everything to do with what's sitting in the tank underneath him. Diesel fuel has a secret most new drivers only learn about the hard way, usually somewhere around their first real cold snap. It's naturally full of paraffin wax, the exact same stuff candles are made of, and when the temperature drops far enough, that wax begins to crystallize inside the tank. First, the fuel turns cloudy. Keep dropping the temperature, and those wax crystals start clumping together into something closer to a sludge, physically plugging the fuel filter and cutting off the engine's fuel supply entirely. Truckers call this gelling, and it doesn't care one bit how warm you manage to keep the cab overnight. A gelled fuel system means a truck that simply won't start in the morning, stranded at a rest stop, waiting on a tow and a fuel line thaw kit in weather that turns dangerous fast for anyone stuck outside without shelter. This is exactly why truck stops switch over to winter blend diesel every single fall, cutting the fuel with kerosene or dosing it with cold flow additives that push the gelling point all the way down to -40. It's also why experienced drivers carry a bottle of emergency anti-gel in the door pocket, the same way other people carry a spare tire, just in case the pump they filled up at wasn't as ready for winter as it claimed to be. The heater keeps the man alive. The additive keeps the truck alive. Lose either one, and the other one stops mattering. But even with a working heater and treated fuel, there's a third layer most drivers won't admit to needing until the first time they actually need it. Truck stop electrification, sometimes called shore power, lets a driver plug his cab straight into a pedestal at certain travel centers, the same basic idea as an RV hookup, and run a small electric heater off the grid instead of the truck's own batteries or fuel at all. It costs a couple of dollars an hour, but it takes every bit of load off the bunk heater and the starter batteries in one go, which matters most on the nights the temperature is genuinely dangerous rather than just uncomfortable. And underneath all of it sits the engine itself, which has its own separate battle to survive the same night. A cold-soaked diesel engine below a certain temperature simply won't turn over in the morning. So before he ever climbs into that bunk, an experienced driver plugs in a block heater that keeps the engine coolant warm enough overnight to guarantee a start at 5 a.m. Skip that step on the wrong night, and it doesn't matter how warm the cab stayed, because the truck itself is done moving until a mechanic thaws it out. 3 heaters, 3 completely different jobs, 3 separate failure points, and only one of them is actually about keeping the driver comfortable. It's 2 in the morning now. Picture yourself in that cab. The heater ticks on somewhere beneath you, a faint hum under the mattress, and warm air rolls slowly across your feet. Outside, the wind is doing something to the trailer that makes the whole frame shudder every few minutes, like something out there is testing it. You've left the sleeper curtain cracked open an inch at the bottom, just enough for the warm air to bleed forward into the cab house and keep the windshield from icing over from the inside out. You reach up and check the little digital readout mounted by your head. 41 degrees inside, -28 outside. You do the math on how long your batteries have left, glance at the fuel gauge out of habit, and go back to sleep. Because this isn't an emergency. This is just Tuesday. That's the part almost nobody outside this life ever really understands. What looks like raw survival from the outside is actually mastery, built one winter at a time. These drivers aren't gritting their teeth through the cold every night. They've engineered a small, working system that turns a rolling steel box into somewhere warmer and more reliable than a lot of apartments. Ask one of them if they'd trade it for a hotel room on a night like this, and most will say no, not because the truck is more comfortable than a bed with real walls around it, but because it's theirs, and because they built it to work exactly like this. The heater, the curtain trick, the additive bottle in the door pocket, none of that happened by accident or by luck. It's a decade of winters, compressed down into a routine that looks effortless from the outside, only because, for them, it stopped being improvised a long time ago. Talk to enough of them, and you notice the cold stops being the scary part of the job pretty quickly. What replaces it is a quiet kind of respect for the systems keeping them alive, the same way a sailor respects a hull instead of fearing the ocean. They check the readout before they check their phone. They know exactly how many hours of battery they've got left before they even glance at the fuel gauge. It's not bravado. It's just what happens when your bedroom and your workplace and your only shelter for the night all happen to be the same 8 feet of steel. Parked somewhere the weather report calls dangerous, and they call Tuesday. So now you know what's actually happening behind that frosted-over windshield, while the rest of the world assumes he's just cold and miserable. If you're a driver watching this, what's the coldest night you've ever pulled through out there? And what almost went wrong before it worked out? And if you've never once sat in a sleeper cab in the middle of a snowstorm, would you actually trust a heater the size of a shoebox to keep you alive until morning?